to talk about a couple of things, mainly software and hardware when it comes to digital drawing, right? And so for those who are aware, Mega Studio or Clip Studio Paint, or what's the other one called? It's called Sci something like that.
Oh yes,
Painting Sci Paint, I don't know, something like that. By Microsmith is the company. They produced Mega Studio for a long time. It's called Clip Studio Paint. So that came out on iPad yesterday. So it's a big old. People are excited. Artists are excited, and some people are not excited, and a lot of people are not happy about the subscription method and so on. And so I want to talk about that for a second, along with the question that everybody always asks. Even after I do these videos, they still ask me the same question, and they're asking, "What's better? Is what is the Surface better? Is the iPad better?" and so on. And so it's not about. And so I'm going to answer those questions right now and talk a little bit about everything. All right. So let's get set up here. And I wish I had brought my Note 10. I have a Samsung Galaxy Note 10. It's a tablet. And what I like about it is that it has a pen. It comes with a pen. Kind of like the Note phone, right? So it comes with a pen. So that's the Note 5. This is the Note 4 right here. And I like these phones because they come with pens. And what I found out in my digital art path is that any machine that comes with a pen, the screen and the drawing experience will be much better than buying a machine that you have to then find a pen from a third-party source. And that was the case with the iPad for a long time, is that you had a nice, awesome tablet, but when it was time to draw on it, you had to go buy all kinds of different pens that may or may not work and so on. When the Surface line of tablets came out, I knew that's what I wanted. I knew that I wanted a PC computer that I could draw on the screen, and just like I do with any sketchbook and drawing on paper. And so I tried it out and I liked it. But then I also saw that Samsung was really working hard on making tablets that you can draw with. And so they have had several Windows machines built by Samsung that come with a pen. It's called the S Pen, Stylus pen, S Pen. And so those were cool because then you could draw right on the screen with the technology they created on the Windows OS, which then allows you to draw with software that you already own or that you can install on a regular computer. And that is where the prize comes in. The fact that you can have a full computer and with the software that you require, the software that you need, and draw right on the screen. So that's really cool, right? Okay, so I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about what my path was and how I view all the software that's around. So when I first got a Surface Pro 3 a few years ago, one of the programs I first installed was Mega Studio, and I doubt that I have that now. And probably don't. And the reason is once I started with Mega Studio and started playing with it, the Sketchable came around, and I was able to get a hold of a Surface Pro 4. So I had like maybe 6 months of experience with Mega Studio. But what I liked about it was that it was very light. It worked on touch. It had the controls I needed for drawing, and I was not used to drawing digitally. So I did not have any kind of training or experience to know whether or not what I was using was right or wrong. I just tried to learn and figure it out. And so I was drawing with that for a while. And but it was still a learning curve because of all the menus, because of all the things that it has inside on the software. And so eventually I got a hold of a Surface Pro 4, and that's when I came across Sketchable. So Sketchable made it real easy. It's a Windows 10 app, and it made it real easy for me to get used to drawing with very basic tools. and part of the learning process with drawing and digital drawing especially is that it's still maturing, right? The software is still maturing. There's still apps being developed, as proven by Clip Studio Paint coming out yesterday. That is a software that's been around for years already, but it's still developments being made. And so what happens is that when we jump into digital art, one of the things that you get is an overload of information, an overload of options, and so you have to be around other artists and someone else to kind of guide you, show you, or give you some pointers, or take a class or go to school. And I'm not into school, but I do enjoy learning from others, and so now you have all these available software, and you have to decide what's going to work for you, and play around with it and see what happens. So when I got around Sketchable, I was able to cut down to just everything, cut back from trying out Mega Studio, cut back from trying to get Photoshop to work on the touchscreen, because a few years ago, Adobe was not putting any resources yet into developing Illustrator and Photoshop to work on touchscreens, which now, of course, with the last couple of years, some updates have been coming fast and furious, because Adobe knows that a lot of us artists, professional artists, are working on a Surface or a computer, a PC computer that has a touchscreen. One day Mac will catch up. In any case, so because the market is wide open with these digital tablets, Adobe's been stepping up. But back in the day, it was really, really hard to just, for me, somebody who's coming in brand new into the tablet space, to really figure out how to create the work that I wanted to create. So it was all experimental. And then so it's through that experiments that then you start trying out whatever you find. And that's where I am right now. I am all about trying out different software, trying out everything that comes in the market, just so that I can see what it does and whether or not it works for me. Let's see, haven't used Cintiq and Surface, which is nice. Use iPad Pro, is just light and fast and great for applications. Carlos, that's right. So Carlos says that the iPad Pro is just light and fast and great for applications, which is correct. And so that's what you gain, right? I'm going to give you some of the things that I've learned in my experience, is that it's true. You can do, the iPad is very light, and it's designed that way. It's light in its programming, right? So if you open a Photoshop program, you open a PC program like Photoshop or Illustrator, it's very heavy, because, of course, those software has been around for 30 years. And so they menu heavy, software heavy, they hog up your RAM, they hog up all the resources on your computer just to run properly and give you what you want, which is, as a professional artist, is what you need, because that's the work that you create and you do, and you use it to produce client-ready work. Whereas the stuff that comes on an iPad, the iPad is not designed to be a workhorse. The iPad is not designed to produce a lot of client-ready work. It was not designed for that. It was really a tool for consumption. So then Apple decided that any software that goes on the iPad or iPhone is an application, and it has limits on how it uses the hardware that's in the iPad or the iPhone. And those limits do not exist in software for Mac or PC, especially for PC, because there's all kinds of levels of a PC. There's cheap computers, laptops you can buy for a couple $100. They sell them for $100. There's some cheap, super cheap that you're gonna be upset when you use them. Kind of laptops that are not designed to run Photoshop and Illustrator, but you can use them to check your email and so on. And so that's been the problem with PC, is that there's different levels of kind of computers you can buy and use, and so the software doesn't care. Software says, I need your computer to be at this level to run what you want, but you can install it on any kind of level laptop if you want. It's just not going to run the same way. And so iPad and Apple's really focused on the experience of the user on their machines, and so they make sure that the software that's available is really enough to work on any one of the iPads or iPhones. Okay, which then helped, and so that's what Carlos is saying, that that the iPad Pro is just light and fast and great applications, because that's how it's set up from the beginning. And it says Illustrator Draw for iPad is amazing, and that's my next point, that Adobe decided to jump in and create applications for iPad, and this right before the iPad Pencil was around and so on. And what they did is they created Adobe Draw, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Draw, Adobe Sketch, and several other Adobe apps. And with Adobe Draw and Adobe Sketch are awesome because they are like really simple, broken down versions of Photoshop and Illustrator. So Adobe Draw, you can draw in vector, and you don't adjust the points, you don't adjust the handles. What you do is you draw right on the screen. But then you can export that to your Creator Cloud, and it opens on your computer, Adobe Illustrator, and you can then edit further and finish the job. So even though there have been some applications that have been available on the iPad to help you create, in the end, you need to export that work into a computer to finish the job. So that's something that you have to keep in mind when working with the iPad. Let me see. Use iPad Pro for convenience and portability. Okay, good. So those are some of the 3 things that I'm going to talk about. And there were some other comments. Let me see. I don't want to miss other people's comments or what they said. Or their questions. Because if you have a question, I'm going to answer it. Does the Surface allow you to draw as vector art and open in Illustrator? Love my iPad Pro, haven't used the Surface yet. Okay, good. So that's Eugene. He's asking the question, and I'm going to get into that. Hello, the iPad is. What's up with you? Did you get come on. Oh, here we go. A new Cintiq yet? Okay. So Haji is asking if did I get a new Cintiq. So I have. So let's talk about hardware and then my path, right? And I'm gonna get into those specific questions. Yes, I do have a couple of Cintiqs. Just to jump on that answer real quick. I have a Cintiq 21-inch that I have at my home office. It's real big, and then I have a Cintiq 13 HD that is kind of small, and I bring that here to the studio and I keep it here, so then I can draw whenever I want to and get things done. What I like about this little one is that it plugs into Mac or PC and it works smoothly. My big Cintiq, I don't know, how big is yours? 13, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the case with some other people, is that my big one is old and it only works on PC, and when I plug it into Mac, the Wi-Fi stops working on the Mac that I'm working on. So I don't know if that's something with me, my Cintiq, or what. But anyways, I do have a couple. And then does the Surface allow you to draw as vector art and open in Illustrator? Yes, of course it does. Of course. And that's where my love for the Surface comes into place. But in any case, I'm going to continue on with the story. So as part of my developing and in the creativity in digital art, I tried out different machines just to find the ones I like. I also have an addiction problem where I love collecting technology, especially if I can draw on it. And that's why I got a couple of Note phones here, and I have an iPad, and I have a Surface, and then and I have a Samsung. It's at home, and then and I got a couple other devices just because I have an addiction. But I try everything out to see whether or not I can draw on it, whether or not I can add it to my workflow, and so that's where my path has taken me. Where from the Samsung Note 10, it's a beautiful, awesome machine. You can draw on it with Adobe Draw, Adobe Sketch, and Procreate. Because it's Android. You can draw with Sketchbook Pro and a couple other things that I can't remember right now. But I do use Adobe Draw and Adobe Sketch because then it's connected to my Creator Cloud, which then allows me to see that drawing on all my other devices and without me having to manually move the artwork around. And so when I tried that out, I was amazed and I love it. But and I even finished a book cover for a friend of mine, Balagun Ojetade. You should check him out. He's an awesome author, and so I did a book cover for him on the Samsung Note 10. So you can definitely create the artwork that you require for your jobs and your clients. However, you have to then export it out of Android into a PC or Mac to then finish the artwork in Photoshop to then set it up and send it off to the client. So that's where the limitation comes into that with Android, right? So even though they make great machines, and I want a Galaxy Book, they got this big old Samsung Galaxy that's like 13 inches, and it has a thing behind it that you can clip. It has a clip on it, and it sits like a stand. It's amazing. They're pretty old now. They're a couple years old now, and but because it exists, I want it. And I believe that it's still good machines. However, if when it comes down to producing artwork as a professional artist and having the artwork be completed and ready for a client, that's when you need a computer. Or the option of having software that can then finish the job, format it correctly, export the files so that the next person or the client or the next artist doesn't have to have the same software or technology that you have. And that's was where the professionals go with that. As a creative person, you can draw on anything and be happy and enjoy it, and whatever works for you, then works for you. But when you're a professional, you need to be able to have exportable files that then somebody else can pick up and use. And so that's what my experiences taught me. And so then I continued to look, right? So then came along the iPad for me, and I had an iPad 2, I think, something like that. And I bought every stylus I could find. I did paid for a bunch of Kickstarters for different styluses that I could find, because they all promised that if once you use it on the iPad, it would draw perfectly and it'd be awesome. Lies. The fact is that only the stylus that comes with the machine will work as smoothly and perfectly as what you need on to do the work that you want and create the artwork that you want. Any third-party stuff will get close, and sometimes they're good tools, but they're not gonna give you that experience that you get by drawing right on like you would with paper and pencil and markers and so on. So there's still a little bit of of the experience that's missing when you're using a third-party stylus. So through all of that, I realized then that I needed something better. Of course, artists and illustrators have been asking Apple for a machine you can draw on that has iOS or OS, and so but here comes Microsoft with the Surface Pro. So I saw the Surface 1, I saw the Surface 2, and it wasn't until the Surface 3 came out that I was able to go out there and buy one straight out. And when I did that, my whole world changed. Because now we had a machine that actually came with a pen. So unfortunately, I think they're not bundled together anymore. So if you buy the new Surface Pro, you have to spend $100 on the pen. However, the Surface 3 and the Surface 4 came with a pen out the box. And so when I got the Surface 3, I was amazing. I could draw right on it. It responds fast. It did what it's supposed to do. And what happened is that Microsoft and Wacom worked together on creating the Surface 1 and the Surface 2. By the time Surface 3 came out, Microsoft had already bought a company out and integrated into building the Surface 3. And so Surface 1 and 2 have different technologies on the screen as the rest of the Surfaces that we know now. And so it was an awesome experience with the Surface. However, Photoshop and Illustrator were not mature enough to run and work correctly on the Surface, which is where a bunch of other apps came into play. So there's several apps out there that work on your PC device. Some of those apps come from the Microsoft Store. Other apps are software like Photoshop and Illustrator. However, those drawing apps, they're trying to take advantage of what is the power of what Surface does. However, there's different levels of surfaces. So you have the i3, the i5, i7, and then you still had the M. processor, and so then not all of them will perform the same way, which then you have to be careful of the machine that you buy, and that'll determine the software you can use. So by the time the Surface Pro 4 came out, met the guys from Silicon Benders, who are the creators of Sketchable app, and they're amazing people, and they created Sketchable as the one software built and made for the Surface line of computers. And so their whole purpose of creating the app is to make sure that there was an app that took advantage of the power while keeping the software light. And that's the thing that Sketchable has, is that it is light enough that work on any machine that runs Windows 10. So even if you have a computer and it's connected to Cintiq, the regular PC computer can also run Sketchable. And so that's been my path, right? Just trying to figure things out. Along the way, I got the iPad Pro. I got a couple of Cintiqs. And so now, as a professional artist, it is important that you have more than one machine. And that's just something I want to say to you and anybody out there. When you're creative and you just want to try things out, play all you want. But when you're dependent on your income to produce professional work for your clients, you're going to need to have a backup. Computers fail, machines fail, software fails, things happen, right? And so you need to be able to have something that you can pick up and continue doing your work. So that's my advice to you. So let me go through some of these comments before I move on to what we all can see and talk about. All right, so let's see. Love the tech and brushes. Tech works itself, just a tool like a brush. Yes. Yeah, so somebody asked if tech makes the art. Do you think we get much into the tech instead of the art? I think, JD, I think you need to be in the both. You need to know your tech. Let me tell you about professional artists, okay? Because they're really focused on professionals. The creators can do what they want, right? If you are like drawing and creating things on your own time, man, pick up a pencil. Number 2 pencil and paper will do for you. All right, a block of sand will do for you. All right, an Etch-a-Sketch will do for you because you're expanding on the creativity. You're being creative. You're being trying things out, and that's okay. But as a professional artist, it frustrates me when I look at an artist and I talk to an artist and I'm looking at their technology and I'm asking them about their machine and they don't know the details. That's your tool. Just like you know what a number 2 pencil does, just like you know what a HB pencil does, a 2B, a 2H pencil does. If you know what those pencils do, because that's your profession, you should know what they do. So should you know your technology. You should know what the iPad can do. You should know what the Surface can do, if that's the technology you're working with, to create your art, to produce art or produce projects for clients, to get paid and pay your bills. You have to know those things. You should know. There, rant over. But it is tools. These are the things that you use to create the work. These are the tools. So with me, I've taken the time to learn the technology, so then I can be more effective with my workflow, and then just sit down and produce work. So now when I produce work, I just sit down and do it. I don't have to figure out why is this computer not working, or why is this setting not right, or this software, trying out software that doesn't work for me. I already know what works for me. I already know what I need, and that's where the experimentation comes into play. So if you know the kind of paints that you like to use, it's because you've experimented with different quality of paints, different brands, different canvases, different pencils, different markers, and so on. So I'm at this level, and professional artists should be at the level where they know the technology, they know their tools, and they have backups. You need to have a backup. The day your computer fails is the day you turn on the other computer and keep working. Anytime that lapses between you finishing a project to the next one is time you're not getting paid, and time that your household will not get their bills paid. Before I move on, does the Surface allow you to draw as vector art? Yes, because the Surface runs Photoshop and Illustrator. So you can draw with your Surface pen right on the screen of the surface on Illustrator. So of course you can. Yes, and I've drawn many times. Check out my videos at Vector Maestros on YouTube, and you'll see a lot of my videos where I draw right on Illustrator. Clip Studio came out yesterday, and one of the things that I'm going through right now is that I need to finish some of my comic book work, and so I have access to professional, and that I can sit with and guide me through some of those steps, and he has an iPad. So Loso, Carlos of Prime Vice has an iPad. I have an iPad, and so since he's very comfortable with that, well then we're gonna draw with that, right? So if I was around and if I could hang out with Alan Tupper of Kamikaze or Havana, then I would be drawing on Photoshop with them because that's what they do their comic pages on. So depending on who I'm talking to, I want to have the hardware and software that they're familiar with, so I can learn what I need to learn from them. And so we're gonna start a comic book process, and you'll see this Facebook Live later, where we're going through an app called Comic Draw. And this weekend, Carlos Loso, you wanted me to just say Loso? Loso?
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds like a little kid or weird.
Carlitos.
So Loso of Prime Vice, he's gonna show us how to use Comic Draw and inking, do digital inking on Saturday. So on Saturday at General Assembly, we're gonna go over that. And so you're welcome to come. It's free. It's at General Assembly. It starts at 10 a.m. And so as we're talking and going through this thing, and we're gonna use Comic Draw, Clip Studio came out with the iPad version of Manga Studio, or called Clip Studio. And so now a lot of artists are trying it out, and if you do a Clip Studio Paint search on YouTube, everybody's talking about it. Everybody is all about Clip Studio and trying it out. And one of the things that I've seen people react to is the price. And of course, I'm the kind of guy that pays for the Creative Cloud. All right, because I'm a professional. I get paid to draw. So if you get paid to draw, you should go out and pay for your art materials. And those art materials sometimes is software. If you're trying things out and having fun and enjoying the creative side of yourself, and you still have a regular job, and then you have to take money from your bills or from hanging out to pay for art materials. But once you start getting paid for your art, and you start getting paid for your art services, some of that money needs to go to support the work that you create, and that is some of the software and hardware. So I'm not too much against paying $8 a month for Clip Studio on the iPad, except that I don't need it. That's where my 3 steps that are in the description of this video come into play. But some artists are not happy with the pricing because they already own Clip Studio or Manga Studio on their PC or Mac, and that is also my case where I have that on my machines too. I have the software, and I don't need to have it on my iPad. And I never even thought of the iPad as using it for that purpose like that. I like using my iPad for simple drawings and sketches that I use on Adobe Draw or Adobe Sketch, and then I export it to Illustrator and Photoshop to finish it off. So the iPad has always been like that one step. Step one, just get out the idea. Oh, I'm thinking of something. There's something an idea that I have, and you should always draw out your ideas. Never hold them in your head thinking that you're gonna draw them later when you have the time. You need to just hurry up and knock it out. And so I love having that option where I can open up the iPad real quick, open Adobe Draw or Adobe Sketch, and get the sketch out, get the idea out, and then later export it out. So with software like Clip Studio Paint, Procreate, Sketchbook, what else? I got a bunch of stuff on here. I have animation, I have Moleskine, I have MediBang Paint. MediBang Paint is free. I have Graphic. Carlos Phoenix just mentioned Graphic. Does Vector. Concepts, I have another app called Concept. I have Paper. I have Sketches, Sketches Pro. The last 3 things I want to mention are the main things that you see on the post. is that and those three things are what did I say? It's budget, it's purpose, and preference. So those are my three ways of breaking down what it is that I want to have and use at that time. And so it has taken me time to collect these devices and have what I want. And like I mentioned before, I have an addiction, and but I've also done some bartering. The first iMac I ever had, first Mac, it was not my first Mac, but it was my first iMac years ago. It's like almost 10 years ago. I got it through a trade for 4 logos. So I did 4 logos, and the guy gave me a Mac. I've been doing a lot of bartering in the last 10 years to then build up the collection that I have now. But that is the first thing you need to think about when it comes to any device. What's your budget? How much money do you have? If you're rich, then go buy everything. There's no better, there's no right, there's no wrong, just get it. But some of us aren't on a budget, and so a few years ago I had the budget of buying a computer or a tablet. That was the choice my wife gave me. And so I had a certain amount of money to use, and so what I did was I looked for deals. I looked for the best deal. I found a deal on the iPad Air, and I found a deal on the Surface Pro 3. So I bought 2 machines. Years before that, I had the budget to either buy a Mac or a PC, and it didn't matter because I had a certain amount of money to spend on a machine. And so I looked at the pricing, I did some shopping around, and I realized that I could either buy one MacBook, or I could buy 2 PC laptops. And so I bought 2 PC laptops. So you have to make those decisions in your life and figure out where your finances and how much money you have to, in your budget to spend on the technology that you want. Just like you would when you go into the art store. Just like you would anywhere you are shopping at the mall. Is that figuring out what's your budget? How much money do you have? And those are usually the questions that I ask my wife when I walk into Best Buy. It's like, how much money do I have? So then she can give me a number, and then I use that, and I say, okay, cool, that's my limit. I know what I want to get for that. So knowing what's your budget will then determine whether or not you can get an iPad, you can get a Surface, you can get a computer, Cintiq, etc. And so you have to work within those budgets. The Surface Note, the Samsung Note 10 that I have, I traded it, so I never paid money for it. I traded an iPad mini for it. And the iPad mini, I forget how I got it. I have to think back on that trade. In any case, you can buy one now, and it's old because it's a 2014. So it's 3 years old. You could buy one still online for like $300. And if you're really, really, really good at Craigslist, you can find one for $100, $200. And they're awesome machines. It runs Android. It runs several drawing apps that are on Android, and you can use the pen to draw on it, and it works really smooth. So that's an option, right? Depending on how much money you have. Do you have a couple $100, a few $100, and can you shop? You know how to shop. Fine. Then if you have a little bit more money, you can get an iPad Air. You can get even the iPad Pro. They have the 9-inch, and it's about $700-800. For $800-900, you can get a Surface Pro, and it'll be a low-level Surface Pro, which I advise you not to get because you need enough RAM, you need enough processor to do really hardcore stuff with it because it's a full computer. And then if you have $1,500, you can get a Surface Pro with at the top of the line, or at least good enough, or you can get a MacBook, right? A good Surface Pro will run you $3,000, but that's the same price you would pay if you bought an iPad and a MacBook. So you buy a MacBook, it's $2,000, iPad $1,000, that's $3,000. But you can have those two things in one machine as a Surface Pro. So that's where those decisions come into play. Is like, well, how much money do you have? And knowing that amount then allows you to then make a choice as to, well, Now let's take that long list of things that are out there and say, well, what can I actually afford, and then which one. Then we go into the next step. Now that you know what you can afford, you go into the next step, and that is purpose. What are you getting this for? Because the question that I get a lot is, which one's better, Dan? What should I get? Well, how much money do you have, right? You got $3,000. You got $5,000. Let's go buy two. You give me one, and you keep one. But then the next question is, well, what are you going to use it for? Because if you're just going to do email and scribble and doodle, then you need a piece of paper and go to the library and check your emails from there, from their computers. But if you want to create something that you can take to other mediums, let's say you want to draw and have a high resolution drawing that then you can export out and take to the printer and make prints, then you need a machine that can have the software that then you can produce that work. If you don't have the Creative Cloud and you like using Adobe Draw and Adobe Sketch, you cannot export the artwork to Illustrator or Photoshop. You'll only be going to be able to export PDFs. If you so you have to take those things into consideration. What are you creating this for? If you're a professional artist, then you need Photoshop or Illustrator. You need Corel Draw. There's no Corel Draw on the iPad. I don't know anybody. Well, I do know a few people who still use Corel Draw. I don't know why. And I think that because a long time ago, some of us who are old, at one time there were two camps. There's still two camps when it comes to hardware, but that software, it had two camps. It had Corel on one side and Adobe on the other. And right off to the side of Adobe was Macromedia. And then Adobe bought Macromedia, so now it's always, so then it was just Adobe against Corel. And to this day, there's some artists out there who still draw with Corel. And so, there are people who use Corel, there are people who need that software and they don't have it. It's not available when it comes to an iPad. It's only for a PC or Mac, not for a device like the iPad, iOS, or it's not for Android. So then your purpose is, if it's for professional work and you're a Corel user, then these are not going to be for you, unless there's an app that you can use on the iPad that then exports the artwork into Corel, and then you can start editing and continue on a device, on a computer. So that's where you start thinking about, well, what works for me? What is going to be right for me? With my case, I got what I want because I've slowly built that up. So the budget part is past, unless I want something new, which I do want, the Surface Book 2. That's amazing. It's an amazing machine. Oh, I love it. Anyways, so now it's my purpose. Well, I'm a professional artist. I need to be able to produce professional work. I need to be able to have artwork that's formatted for whatever purpose is out there for my clients. And so, like a book cover. So I've done couple other book covers for Balagoon since, and I'll start them on a device, and I'll do the initial sketching. I'll get my layouts together to compose the image the way it needs to be, and then I export it out into Photoshop, and then I start working. And because I want to be in the one machine, so now it comes down to workflow. Then I use my Surface Pro to then, so from the Surface Pro, I'm drawing on Sketchable because it's real easy to draw on Sketchable. And then I grab what I drew on Sketchable and I save the Photoshop file from Sketchable. I open up Photoshop and I finish off the file and format it to the 6x9 size of the book cover, add my text. I clean up any layers and clean up any details that need to be done, and it's complete, and I have a finished product. So that's my workflow, and that's my purpose. I also have Adobe Sketch and Adobe Draw, and sometimes I have these ideas and that I want to just explore, right? My own creativity. I have friends. I have Mr. E, the motivator, up in Dubai, who always has an idea. Says, Dan, what about this? What about that? And when he's asking me, he's really telling me that's what he wants me to draw. So some of the drawings that I've done for him are stylized using Adobe Draw. And so I'll open Adobe Draw, get the sketch, get the drawing together, finish it, export it out to Illustrator, and now it's fully scalable, and I send him the file, and now he can do t-shirts and everything else that he wants to do with that artwork. So that's where the purpose comes into play. It's not about which machine is better, it's like which machine is going to give you what you want. And then the last thing to consider is preference. There are Windows haters out there. There's Apple haters out there. There are a bunch of people who have a very, very hardcore opinion about the hardware that they use. So now you may be one of those persons. You may be told, and this I'm telling you right now, that the Surface Pro is the one to use, but because you can't stand Windows since back in the Vista days, you only buy Mac, so you're gonna go out and get an iPad Pro and a MacBook. Fine, if that works for you and that's what you want, why not? But do know that Windows has come a long way. I've been a Windows supporter and since Windows 8 came out. By the time Windows 7 was there, it was cool, it got better. Windows 8 really started to show what Windows should be about. And it was called Windows Metro, and I thought that was going to be an amazing thing, and I still wish they had kept the Metro name. And then Windows, when they called it Windows 8 and then 8.1, it just got better and better. People complain, but that's where the evolution was going. And so now we have Windows 10, and they're just cranking it out, making it better and better. There's always glitches with computers, though. There's always software problems. That's just natural. There's no machine that's gonna be right. My iPhone started tripping as soon as I put out iOS 11. It's been tripping ever since. I got to tripping so hard that I'm just using an Android. I'm using this Note 5 as my go-to phone right now because I'm tired of how unreliable my iPhone has become. That's hardware and that's software, and those are the things that we have to face when it comes to technology anyways. Just like your pencil tip will break when you're drawing, so you have to stop, sharpen it, get back to drawing with your pencil. The pencil's not perfect. It's a piece of wood with some lead in it, graphite, but that's it. So what are you going to be mad that you bought a 10-pack of number 2 pencils for $1, and now that pencil's not doing what it's supposed to do? So spend $20 on a pencil. I bought a pack of Black Wings, and they're beautiful. They're amazing pencils, very soft, very smooth, but they still got to sharpen them. The tips, if I press too hard, they're going to break. That's just how the tools are, right? So you got to get past that, and you got to get into, well, if you have a preference, if you have a way of working, if you have a workflow, then find the tools that are going to best help you with that. If you have an iPad and you have a MacBook, you can connect them with the lightning cable and use your iPad as a second screen to your MacBook and run Photoshop and Illustrator on your MacBook, but see it on the iPad. The workflow is there. What is going to work for you? What is it that you prefer? What is it that you like? If you're heavily invested in Windows, then stay with Windows, because then you might have had a bunch of hard software that only works on Windows. Well, great. Windows has a lot of different machines that are running Windows 10s. There's Dell has machines, HP has machines. There's the Yoga Book is amazing. I want one of those too, just cause I want to have it. That's all. So that comes down to preference. So go for what's going to work for you. But my last piece of advice is that go to the store. All right, you can go to the Apple store, sit there for 10 hours all day long, and draw on an iPad. You can go to the Microsoft store, sit there and draw for 10 hours and draw on a Surface. Do not discount the technology without trying it out. Get a feel for it. Try out what the Surface Pen does. Try out what the Apple Pencil does. If there was a Wacom store nearby, that would be awesome, right? Because then we can just spend all day drawing on Wacom. Shush, why not? Oh yeah. So try out things, see how they work for you, and why not? And that's going to be my same advice with software. Clip Studio Paint is out. They're giving you 6 months of free trial. Where do you ever get 6 months of free trial? Anywhere. Where? Tell me about some other place in La La Land where they'll say, yeah, you can use that for 6 months. Free. They had developers, they had designers, they've had people on the payroll for I don't know how long to make sure that this Clip Studio Paint worked on the iPad. Somebody had to get paid, and they're letting you use it for free. Try it out. So I downloaded it, I put it on my machine. Loso of Prime Vice was out here a little earlier, going over it and checking the options and see what you can do, because apparently, and this is what I know from Manga Studio, I have Manga Studio 5 EX, is that it's different from the regular Manga Studio 5, is that it supports you creating books. So it supports multiple pages on a file. And you can do that in InDesign, but not draw in InDesign. But that's what I know about Manga Studio EX, that it looks similar in InDesign, and it has the little boxes for all the pages and so on. And so so try it out. Why not? Let's see what it can do. And he was going over some of those things, and it sounded like you can do that in here. Mm-hmm. For the free trial, you can save your work, play, create, produce. In 6 months, how many comic books could you possibly produce? If you're a pro, a lot of them. And then see what it's like. And if you have the regular version of Manga Studio or Clip Studio Paint, and now they change the names. It's forget the name now. It's going to another new name. Stylus, I think, is the name of the company now, because it went from Smith Micro to something else. And so, if you have those versions of the PC or Mac, well, then you can still use the files that you created on the iPad, and that's a big advantage, right? Try it out, see how it works. I may try it out because I have it. I'm going to do my best and see what I can do with it, right? However, I'm also trying out Comic Draw on the iPad, because Loso of Prime Vice, that's what he works with. He's been working with that app since it came out in the beginning, and we're going to hear that story. He's going to tell me more about it later. But I have some comic books that I want to work on, that I want to finish, that I want to get out there for y'all to see. And he's going to guide me through some of that process, because right now what I see is this big thing, and it's like a big old lump in my head that I need to get it to come out, and it only comes out as a lump, and it doesn't work that way. It needs to come out in some kind of order. So he's going to work with me on that. We're going to use Comic Draw, because he's used it, and it has all the options that you need for a comic book. I'm going to try that out. Why not? If he had a Surface and he had Manga Studio on it, the EX, that you can do the full book, then I would use that. Whatever another person has that I'm trying to learn from, then I'm going to try to have that and see and learn from their workflow. And then later, as time goes on, I come up with my process and my way that works best, and keep it moving. But it's okay to try things out. It's okay to try out the apps. I got a ton of drawing apps on here that I sometimes never touch. I have MediBang Paint just because it's free. MediBang Paint is free. Krita, where's Krita? I didn't download Krita in here. That's also free. And MediBang Paint and Krita are available on iOS, PC, Mac, and Android. Imagine that. So that's my message for today. I hope you learned something.